Good evening, my friends and ICC members. My name is Michael Rahal. I'm an international chess master living in Spain, and I'm bringing to you today the first of 6 videos in which we will be covering the 2024 Candidates Tournament, which, as you all know, will start in a few days. I am Mike Rahal on ICC, so you can check me out there, and hope to be able to play with many of you soon. For the first time in history, the FIDE Candidates Tournament will be held in the North American continent. From the 3rd to the 23rd of April, the city of Toronto in Canada will be hosting the 2 double round closed round robin tournaments with 16 of the best players in the world, the FIDE candidates with the 8 qualified players, and the FIDE women's candidates with the 8 qualified players. For the first time, as I said before, they will be organized in the same dates and the same venue in the Great Hall of Toronto. So only one player will be the winner of each of these events, and whoever emerges first will face off with the world champion Ding Linen from China and Chu Wenjun from China as well at the end of the year to see who is the world champion of chess 2024. They will also be competing for a very large prize fund, 500,000 euros in the candidates tournament, in the main event, and 250,000 euros in the women's tournament. Very good prizes, apart from the fact that they're playing for the bigger prize of a chance at the world title. Who is sponsoring the event? The Scheinberg family. They live in Toronto for many years. It's their favorite city. And some years back, they signed an agreement with FIDE to organize several top-level events until 2026. They already organized the candidates in Madrid in 2023, a cool event in March, and now they will be sponsoring it's a sponsorship, the 2024 ones in Toronto. They've also sponsored the FIDE Grand Prix, the FIDE Grand Swiss, the 2 other Grand Swiss events, the Isle of Man Grand Swiss in 2023, and the candidates, as I said before, in 2022. So you'll be asking, who is going to play the candidates? Well, for now, I'm sure that most of you already know the answer to that, but in the preview, we're going to give you my personal take on each of the players, also providing some statistical information. So I've decided to separate the 8 players in the main event in 3 or 4 different groups. My groups are the Americans, the threats from Russia, the upcoming young talents, and my 4th group is the Enigmas. So let's get into it. Who are the Americans? Well, obviously, the Americans are Fabiano Caruana and Hikaru Nakamura. Let's start with Fabiano. He's 31 years old, and other than Magnus Carlsen, who, as you all know, is the best player in the world, but he has waived his rights to play in the candidates and defend his title, Fabiano is the only player in the world currently above 2,800. For Mehdi, the principal favourite to win the event, and also he seems to be peaking right at the moment. Fabiano typically plays very well or normally very badly, relative to his level, of course. And now he seems to be playing very, very well. So personally, I think he is the favourite. Judging by the odds, he's also the favourite, and he seems to be peaking at the right time. I was at the 2023 Baku World Cup, where he qualified as 3rd placed finisher, and I was there as FIDE press officer the whole month. I interviewed him several times during the after key games, and he seemed to me always very calm, had a very calm demeanor, very nice, very capable as a person, as a human being, and a fantastic player on the board. Very theoretical, with great and deep opening knowledge, always looking for a fight. Maybe sometimes he has had some troubles in the past, close games, which he has winning positions. But as I said before, he is peaking at a very good moment. So let's see what happens. But Fabiano clearly at the top of the list. The other American is 5 times USA champion Hikaru Nakamura. 36 years old, rated 27.89. And as most of you know, since COVID, already more a full-time streamer than a chess professional. But, of course, a brilliant player with very good tactical awareness, tremendous fortitude in the game, always plays it to the end, a fighter, and used to be slightly worse in opening theory, but has also got himself up to the top of the list in that aspect as well. So Nakamura, again, for many players, probably one of the favourites to win the game. I mean, 2022 Fischer Random World Champion. He won the FIDE Grand Prix also. In 2023, he won the Norway Chess Tournament, the Chess World Masters, the American Cup, several top tournaments. And also, many of you know that he streams his games afterwards, which is something that he's the only player who does that. Obviously, a tremendous energy strain. But on the other hand, something that he enjoys doing, and maybe is part of his ritual to not focus so much on the result, but on the process. So these are the 2 Americans, maybe the 2 main favourites in the tournament. And Magnus Carlsen was asked recently on the Norwegian chess podcast, Shashnak. One of the interviews asked him who was his favourite. And he said that Nakamura and Nakamura are the best and most consistent players. And if anybody else wins, for him it would be a bit of a surprise. We have the threat from Russia. Could the threat from Russia be the surprise player? Former 2 times candidate winner, 2 times world title contender, Ian Nepomniachtchi from Russia, 27.58, winner of the past 2 candidate tournaments, and also contender to the world title against Ding Liren last year and 3 years ago against Magnus Carlsen. I mean, he must be in the top tier to take away the title from the Americans. Can he take his revenge? Can he win again for the 3rd time, surpassing Vasily Smyslov, who is the only player in history to have won the candidates twice? If he gets there, if he succeeds, for sure he will set an unbelievable record for the history books. Now these 3 have to fight against the new generation. 3 young and upcoming talents set to make their mark at the event. Maybe they are too young, maybe they are too inexperienced to be a real threat at the moment, but these kids, they get better very fast. You never know when they're going to start peaking. First, let's talk about Alireza Firouzja. Former Iranian, now French player, rated 26.60 and only 20 years old. He secured his spot as the best rating in January. Everyone will remember he was farming rating points in some French obscure Swiss events in December to overtake Lenier, Dominguez and Wesley So on the rating list, which he was able to do, fair and square. Probably the most talented player of his generation, but maybe with the lack of consistency in the last couple of years, he was about to reach 2800, then he dropped down again. Can this be his tournament? Probably unlikely, but for sure he could be a candidate if he gets there in good shape. Now we have 2 other young talents, the 2 Indians, Praggnanandhaa and Gukesh. Both of them rated 27-47. Both of them young. Gukesh 17, Pragnananda 18. Both rated the same. Both of them already established in the elite, having won many top events and many very strong players. Can one of these two players really pose a threat to the top elite players in the tournament? It stands to see. My personal opinion is that of the two, possibly Pragnananda has a more rounded, complete game than Gukesh. But both of them are extraordinarily good, and any one of them can make an upset in this tournament. And finally, we have two enigmas. The first enigma is the other Indian player, Vidit Gujrati. He's 29, so he's more one of the experienced players, one of the players of the generation of Caruana and Nepomniachtchi than of the generation of the kids. Now, having said that, he's actually peaking now both in rating and in gameplay. So this is the highest he's been on the list. Of course, these other players are 2800, but he's 2750, which is not so far away. He won the Isle of Man 2023 Grand Swiss in great style, possibly unexpectedly. And he is a very good technical player. However, if things don't go well for him in the first games, my sense is that he won't be able to get a rebound in the second half of the tournament. I think he really needs to start off well to keep up a good pace and have the motivation to go forward in the tournament. And the other enigma is Nijat Abazov. Now, Nijat Abazov is from Azerbaijan. He is only 26-23. 28 years old, of the same generations as Vidit and Nepomniachtchi. Obviously, Abazov is on a different level than all these players I've mentioned before. He's more than 100 points below the rest of the players. That obviously puts him in a very different situation than the top guns of the tournament. Although I would love for him to be a sort of Cinderella story, a David against Goliath. Once again, it seems to me that his place on the bottom of the table is practically a foregone conclusion because there's such a big gap in level. However, having said that, if any of the other players plays sensibly badly and scores a 2600 percentage performance, as long as he scores a bit higher than his rating, he might avoid ending up last. But for sure, he should be ending up in the last two places. Now, why is Abazov playing? Well, he played a wonderful, a magnificent World Cup in Baku in Azerbaijan in his hometown in August. As I said before, I was there working and I witnessed the strength of his play during that tournament, and he finished fourth. Now, there are only 3 spots for the candidates, and having finished fourth, he was out in contention. However, Magnus Carlsen, the winner of the World Cup, waived his rights, and Abazov came in, taking the place of Magnus Carlsen. Of course, you might think, okay, he came fourth. What's the big deal? Well, the World Cup features 300 of the world's best players, and Abazov was probably number 80 or number 90. So, reaching the fourth place is obviously a huge overachievement for the 28-year-old Azerbaijan player. Of course, he does have the chance, although he is an underdog, of proving that his qualification was not a fluke, was not a stroke of luck, and make his home fans proud of his achievement traveling to Toronto. Now, before we go to the women's section, I would like to mention very briefly the names of 4 or 5 players who I think are missing, but could clearly be one of the players here in Toronto. Some of the names I'm sure you guys know about. For example, the regulars Wesley So and Anish Giri. Now, these two were actually qualified by rating or by the FIDE Grand Prix Tour. But in December, Gukesh took away Gidi's spot at the last minute. And as we mentioned before, Firouzja was able to knock out Wesley So on the rating list. So any one of these two could easily be one of the contenders in this edition of the candidates, and actually both of them have played candidates before and more than once. Now, of the young generation, I would say the main player I will be missing in Toronto is Uzbekistan's prodigy Nordibek Abdustorov, 19 years old, already 2750, number 1 world player in March, 11 world player in March, and clearly set to become one of the elite best players in the world. Now, Abdustorov, I've seen him play several times. I've witnessed his greatness. He's a fantastic player, and it's a pity he hasn't qualified this time, but for me it's clear that in future candidates he will be a player to follow. Another very good player who I'm sure many fans would love to see is Chinese prodigy Wei Yi. 2755, he'd be right in the mix rating wise, and he's only 23 years old. It seems sometimes that he's been here for many a year, but really he's not so old. He's making a great comeback. He won in Tata Steel at the start of the year, already scoring some very valuable points for the FIDE Grand Tour, and also he's very aggressive in his game. People love to see him play his attacking styles. So these are the players I would love to see here in Toronto, and they won't be playing. Regarding odds, our friend Ty Bruce Zimmerman, I hope I pronounced your name properly, Ty. He has the Chess Numbers website and he runs some percentages, and he gives Fabiano Caruana closing at 36% chance of winning, which I think is quite reasonable, with Nakamura just behind at 25%. Now, my surprise is to see that Nepomniachtchi is only rated 10%, which I think is slightly underrated as an odds favourite. Of course, Tai is using the numbers. He's using the FIDE rating list, which does sometimes give some surprising results. I would put Nepomniachtchi slightly higher. He does have 2 recent candidates tournaments under his belt, and although he hasn't been playing very well recently, it seems that he focuses all his attention on this tournament, which is probably the most important one in the year. Of course, Abazov is closing at less than 1%, so this gives you an idea of how these percentages run. As I mentioned before, the main event and the women's event will be played in the same venue, one next to the other. I don't have the distribution of the games, but I'm supposing they will be in a nice mix in the playing hall. Let's talk a bit more about the ladies who are participating, and I'd launch an interesting question for you guys. Do you think that putting them together will give the ladies event more exposure media-wise, or will they be overshadowed by the elite group? Something to think about. Hopefully, and personally I think that it will be better, but it still stands to be seen. So the top rating player in the group is Russian player Alexandra Goryachkina. She has crossed 2600 in the past, but now she's on 2553, winner of the 2023 Baku World Cup Women's Edition. Huge experience in candidates tournament. She won in 2019, and also she has been one of the main fixtures in women's chess for the last few years. If we eliminate some of the Chinese players from the equation, Goryachkina is clearly number 1 favorite for the win. But just behind, Lei Tingji, the favorite, the first of the 2 Chinese players, 27 years old, from China, won the candidates in the last edition, although it was match play, and played against Zhu Wenjun for the title. Unfortunately, she lost the title, and she'll be eager to get a second chance. She's very ambitious, totally fearless, at the top of her game in the moment, and I think she must be in the favourites for the win. Two Indian players in Toronto this year. 36-year-old Hampi Koneru, 25.46 rating. She qualified as the highest player in the January 1st, 2024 rating list. She's impressive. I mean, semi-finals of the Women's World Champion in 2004, 2008, 2011. Peak rating of 26.23, the highest peak rating of all the players in the field. However, she's also the oldest player in the field, and with age comes lack of energy and lack of motivation. Now we'll see if she can bring forward her best game in this event. The second Russian contender, 34 years old, Katarina LNO, with 25.42 rating points. She qualified via the Grand Prix, the Women's Grand Prix, in which she emerged winner. And Katarina has won 2 women's European gold medals and 4, none less than 4 women's World Blitz and Rapid titles. If my memory doesn't play against, I think it was 3 Blitz and 1 Rapid events. However, she has never won the title, and as far as I remember, hasn't qualified for the final of the candidates, at least in the recent years. So time is coming on for Katarina. She's 34 years old. Maybe this could be her year. The second Chinese player is the Women's Grand Swiss runner-up, 32-year-old Tan Zhongyi. Rated 25.21. She peaked at 25.30, which is more than 100 points below Hampi or Garyachkina. She has already reached the world title as a winner in 2017-2018. But although having been world champion before, in the last final candidates she lost against Lei Tingli. However, she does have the 2022 World Rapid Women's Championship under her belt. So it's hard to say if she will be in contention this year. I have been following a lot of these women in my job as FIDE press officer last year in the different Women Grand Prix tournaments, and all of them are extremely strong and fearsome and fighting players. If I had to decide for one of them, probably I go towards either Alexandra Goryachkina or maybe towards Ukraine's Anna Muzychuk, one of the best female players in the world. She has definitely stood the test of time. 34 years old, peaking at 26.06 in 2012. She has won the Women's World Rapid Blitz tournament several times. Her sister Maraya has been the world champion on one occasion and helps her a lot, both technically and psychologically in the tournaments. She is a feared theoretician, very good in openings, very good in positional play. I think Anna might have a very serious chance at the title this year. It all depends her form, how will she arrive in Toronto. The second Indian player, brother of Pragnananda, is 22-year-old Vali Ramish. Babu, 24.81. She won the Grand Swiss in the Isle of Man. Unexpectedly, she achieved the Grandmaster title and she travels to Toronto with her brother Pragnananda. It's the first time in history that two siblings, two brothers, brother and sister, are playing the candidates together. Now, personally, I think that Vaishali is a notch behind the rest of the players I've mentioned before. Both Vaishali and Nurgul Salimova, who we will talk about now, I think they are contenders for the last place in the tournament because of their lower rating with respect to the rest of the field. But they're getting better every day. They're very young, very talented, and again, it's a bit like the young talents in the main event, like Gukesh, like Pragnananda. Will the lack of experience be a major factor for these guys? We have to see this in Toronto in a few days' time. And the last player of the women's event, last but not least, Bulgaria star player Nurgul Salimova, rated 24-26, 20 years old, tremendously strong, tremendously good, generally considered by most to be the underdog in the field, but she did play very well in Baku, reaching the semi-finals and achieving her spot in the candidates. Good results recently, Reykjavik, Europeans Team Championship. She's been playing very well and leaving behind some very, very good games. So I wouldn't take her out of the equation yet. Guys, it's been a pleasure for me to prepare this preview, this report. I hope that you now have some more information to be able to choose who you are going to be rooting for of this event. And I'll see you soon for the first recap video, which will probably be published after the first 4 rounds on the rest day. So stay tuned and see you soon.